We are used to thinking of our everyday life as safe and our home as a fortress, where every object serves us. But sometimes an ordinary routine turns into a death trap because of one silly mistake or fatal coincidence. This is not a horror movie scenario, but a reality in which an ordinary day can become the last one just because you were at the wrong time and with the wrong object in your hands. Today, you will learn about 7 people for whom everyday life ended in tragic absurdity. Cases that are hard to believe but impossible to forget. Saturday nights in the suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia, are usually filled with the aromas of grilled meat and the sound of children laughing. This is the heart of the barbecue belt, where the ability to handle a grill is considered the main virtue of a grown man. Robert Bennett, 52, was no exception. His backyard was a real sanctuary, perfectly mowed grass, trimmed bushes, and the centerpiece, a massive premium cast-iron charcoal grill. Robert was a perfectionist to the core. He didn't recognize gas burners, believing that only natural charcoal and smoke give the steak its true flavor. That day, Robert was expecting special guests, his daughter and her fiancé, who had come from out of state. He wanted everything to be perfect. But August in Georgia is moody. The air was heavy and still due to the high humidity, and the coals in the grill were reluctant to ignite. Time was running out. The guests were already parking their cars outside the house, and the grill was producing only a faint gray smoke instead of powerful heat. Robert, feeling the pressure of time and wanting to maintain his reputation as the king of the grill, decided to improvise. Instead of waiting another half hour, he remembered his new multifunctional garden vacuum cleaner that he had bought just last week to clean the paths. The device had a powerful turbine motor and a reverse function that turned it into a giant hairdryer. 1 minute of directed airflow and the coals will shine like the sun, he thought. He took the device out, switched it to blowing mode, and, with his legs spread wide for stability, pointed the long plastic nozzle into the thick of the coals. Robert did not take into account a fatal coincidence. The night before, he had cleaned the area under the old oak trees with this vacuum cleaner, sucking up not only dry leaves but also fine wood dust, bits of bark, and pine needles. When he was done, he hadn't emptied the bag completely, and some of the light, dry debris was stuck in the bends of the inner pipe and near the engine filter itself. As soon as he pulled the trigger to full power, the turbine began to pump air. But due to turbulence and back pressure from the grill itself, several hot sparks from the coals were instantly sucked into the nozzle. In the confined space of the pipe, filled with oxygen and dry dust, a volumetric explosion occurred. The garden tool in Robert's hands instantly turned into a jet flamethrower. Instead of blowing up the grill, the device threw a column of flame with a temperature of over 1,000 degrees in the man's direction. Out of surprise and pain, Robert let go of the handle, but he had put a safety strap over his shoulder beforehand so that the weight of the device would not tire his arms. This decision proved fatal for him. The burning vacuum cleaner, which was still working, hung directly on his chest, pressed by the belt to his cotton shirt. The molten plastic of the case began to drip onto his skin, and the motor, running at maximum speed, continued to fan the fire, turning Robert's clothes into a continuous conflagration. He struggled with the belt carabiner, but his fingers were no longer obedient because of the burns. When his daughter ran out into the yard, she saw only the burning silhouette of her father in the middle of the idyllic garden. Robert Bennett did not die at the hands of a criminal or in a car accident. He was killed by his own impatience and a small handful of dry leaves that he had forgotten about. This case became a tragic lesson for the entire county. Even the most commonplace tool can become a deadly weapon if used contrary to the laws of physics and common sense. Denver, Colorado, is known for its harsh climate and its residents' love of healthy lifestyles. It was here, in the suburbs, that 22-year-old Tyler Reed worked the night shift. Tyler was a typical representative of the gym generation. He spent every free minute with dumbbells, and his social media was full of videos of him testing his strength in the most unusual conditions. His friends called him Tyler of Steel, and he did everything he could to live up to this nickname. The tragedy happened on Tuesday at 3 in the morning. The Fresh Meadows supermarket had been closed to the public for an hour. Tyler and his colleague, 19-year-old trainee Mark, were finishing up the shelving in the frozen food section. The work was boring, and to have some fun, Tyler decided to stage another show of force. He targeted the massive sliding glass doors of the main entrance. These doors were powered by a powerful hydraulic system. They were designed to withstand strong gusts of mountain wind and operate smoothly for decades. Tyler told Mark that his muscles were strong enough to stop the door when it started to automatically close on the night lock. Mark, taking it as another joke, just smiled, but Tyler was already standing in the doorway. He knew the door was equipped with motion sensors. However, he also knew the bug of this model. The sensors scanned the space in front of the door, but had a blind spot right in the metal profile of the frame itself. Tyler stood sideways, leaning one shoulder against the stationary part of the wall and prepared to meet the moving glass with his palms. When the security system timer went off, the door began its slow but inexorable movement. Tyler tensed up, his biceps bulged, and a confident smile appeared on his face. For the first few seconds, he thought he was winning. But hydraulics is not a person. It does not get tired. When the computer sensed resistance, it did not stop the engine, as home elevators do, but rather increased the pressure, interpreting the obstacle as a strong wind or a stuck object that needed to be pushed through to completely seal the room. The moment Tyler realized that the pressure was becoming unbearable, he tried to jump back, but his shoulder was already trapped in the same blind spot. The metal frame began to cut into his chest. Tyler opened his mouth to scream, but his lungs could no longer take in enough air. The hydraulic pressure acted like a slow steel vise. Mark, hearing the crunching of glass, rushed to the control panel, but in his panic, he couldn't remember the access code for the emergency stop. When the police arrived 10 minutes later, the doors were completely locked. The automation had done its job, securing the store, but at the cost of the life of a young man who simply wanted to prove that human muscles are stronger than industrial steel. For 68-year-old David Hall of Lexington, Kentucky, comfort was a top priority. After a long career in logistics, David decided to invest some of his savings in a home of the future. The pearl of his living room was a massive leather-transforming sofa worth more than $5,000. It was a masterpiece of engineering. It had built-in heated cup holders, massage areas, and a sophisticated steel mechanism that turned the chair into a full bed at the touch of a button. That fateful evening, David was going to watch the evening news. He sat down comfortably, raised the footrest with the remote control, and was reaching for his tea when the remote slipped from his hands. As if on purpose, the small device fell into the technical gap between the soft armrest and the main seat cushion. Instead of getting up and going around the back of the couch, David decided to get the remote without leaving his seat. He leaned to the right as much as possible, putting his hand deep into the mechanism. But the remote rolled too far. Then David knelt down on the floor and literally dove head and shoulders into the insides of the couch, trying to feel the gadget among the metal beams and wires. It was at that moment that a cruel accident occurred. While groping for the remote in the dark, David reflexively leaned his elbow on the inner side panel, where there were duplicate touch-sensitive control buttons. One of them was the Home button, a command to fully fix the sofa in the folded state. A powerful, silent electric motor instantly activated the heavy lever system. David felt the steel frame begin to move inexorably. He tried to pull his head out, but the couch was designed to support the weight of several adults. It had no compression sensors. The heavy metal crossbar, designed to support the legs, began to fold inward, pressing David's head and chest against the inner steel base. The force of compression was enormous. For several seconds, David tried to push off the floor with his hands, but the mechanism worked according to a clear algorithm. When the sofa completely folded, the living room plunged into silence. The man was found only 2 days later, when a neighbor noticed that mail was piling up on the doorstep. The sofa looked perfect, assembled, clean, without a single sign of struggle. Only the remote control lying on the floor beneath it was a mute witness to how the desire for maximum comfort had caused a completely senseless and inevitable tragedy. Saturdays in the small town of Billings, Montana, are usually quiet. For 34-year-old Marcus Torres, a perfect day off meant complete isolation from the outside world. Closed curtains, a big bowl of homemade popcorn, and a marathon of classic horror movies. Marcus was a true movie buff and had recently installed a professional sound system in his living room that, according to the manufacturer, allowed him to feel every whisper and every explosion. That night, he was watching a new psychological thriller movie. Marcus was half lying in his chair, immersed in the atmosphere of tension on the screen. He had an old, almost childlike habit. While watching, he would occasionally throw a kernel of popcorn up and try to catch it with his mouth. It was a kind of mechanical action that helped him relieve the tension of the plot. There was a dead silence on the screen. The protagonist was walking slowly down a dark corridor, and the camera was focusing on his face. At that moment, Marcus threw another portion of airborne corn. The kernel was at the highest point of its trajectory, right in front of Marcus's open mouth, when the silence in the movie suddenly broke. The director used the screamer technique, combining the monster's sudden appearance with a deafening, piercing sound effect that imitated the scraping of metal. Thanks to Marcus's new subwoofers, the sound was so powerful that the living room floor shook. The fright caused Marcus to have an instant gasp reflex, a sharp, deep, and uncontrollable breath. The problem was that in that very millisecond, the popcorn kernel started falling down. Instead of just falling on the tongue, it was literally sucked into the airways by a powerful stream of air. The shape of the popcorn, uneven, light, and porous, worked as a perfect blockage. The kernels passed through the vocal cords and blocked the trachea. Marcus instantly grabbed his throat. He tried to cough to push the foreign body out, but his lungs were empty. He took a breath, but no air got in, and the grain acted like a valve that closed even tighter with each attempt to exhale. He fell to the carpet, knocking over the bowl, and the remains of the popcorn scattered around him. All alone, with the sound of the intense soundtrack continuing to blare from the speakers, Marcus fought for every breath of oxygen that was no longer available. When he was found the next day, the TV was still on, showing the main menu of the movie, and Marcus was lying among the scattered treats. A medical examination confirmed that the cause of death was complete mechanical asphyxiation caused by a single grain of corn that was in the wrong place at the wrong time. El Paso, Texas, is a city where the heat in summer is almost tangible to the touch, and the cosplay and comic book culture has a huge community. 19-year-old Jake Miller was a part of this community. He didn't just love superhero movies, he lived them. Jake spent months creating his costumes, striving for absolute authenticity that ordinary fancy dress shops could not offer. For the upcoming Comic-Con festival, Jake was preparing his most ambitious project, the Mercury costume, but in a unique interpretation, where the superhero was supposed to look like a futuristic pilot in a hermetic outfit. To create the effect of living muscles and a perfectly smooth surface, Jake made the suit from high-quality, dense latex. It was a one-piece suit that covered the entire body from neck to toe, with sealed cuffs and a special hidden flap in the sleeve area. Jake's plan was simple, as he thought. To prevent the latex from hanging in folds and looking like cast armor, the suit had to be pumped with a small amount of air, creating internal pressure. On a Saturday night, while wearing his creation in the garage, he realized that the handheld ball pump was too weak. So he got into his old Ford and drove to the nearest self-service gas station, which had a powerful tire inflator. It was late, and there was no one at the gas station except the cashier behind the armored glass. Jake got out of the car, looking like an alien from the future. He inserted the metal hose tip into the valve on his sleeve. What Jake didn't realize was that gas station compressors are designed to deliver air at enormous pressures, up to 80-100 psi, to quickly fill hard car tires. The volume of air between human skin and a layer of latex is insignificant compared to a truck wheel. As soon as he pressed the lever, something happened that the laws of physics could not allow to change. A powerful jet of air instantly blew the suit away. In a split second, Jake turned into a giant rubber balloon. The problem was that the latex was of such high quality and strength that it didn't burst immediately. Instead, it acted like a giant vice, pressing inward. The pressure on his chest was so instantaneous and powerful that Jake was unable to take even a short breath. The air from the compressor continued to flow, compressing his abdominal cavity and diaphragm. His internal organs began to collapse under such external pressure. Jake tried desperately to disconnect the hose, but the bloated suit made his arms immobile, as if he were shackled to concrete. After 5 seconds, the suit finally gave out and exploded with a roar that sounded like a cannon shot. Jake fell to the asphalt near the tire pump. The cashier heard the explosion and called paramedics, but no help was needed. An autopsy showed that the cause of death was multiple internal organ ruptures and cardiac arrest caused by barotrauma. His own desire to look like a perfect superhero created conditions in which the human body simply could not survive. That night in El Paso, only pieces of shiny latex remained on the asphalt, mute witnesses to the superhero game meeting the ruthless engineering power of industrial equipment. Yellowstone National Park, Wyoming, is a majestic wilderness that attracts millions of tourists every year. However, for many visitors, this park seems not like a wild forest, but a huge zoo, where animals are just decorations for their social media feeds. Kevin Anderson, a 32-year-old marketing manager from San Francisco, was just such a tourist. His travel blog had more than 50,000 followers, and he knew that nothing boosts reach like getting up close and personal with wildlife. On that June morning, Kevin was driving his rented SUV down a secondary road in the park. The sky was clear and the air was fresh. Suddenly, around a bend, he spotted movement. A small, fluffy grizzly bear cub stepped out onto the side of the road, curiously looking at the flowers. Kevin felt an adrenaline rush. It was the very golden shot he was looking for. Ignoring all the warnings he had seen at the entrance to the park, Kevin stopped the car and got out. He knew the main rule, never approach bears, but he also knew the Instagram rule. The closer you are to the subject, the better the photo. Kevin pulled out his extendable selfie tripod, attached his phone, and began to slowly approach the cub. The cub looked completely harmless. It was no bigger than a large dog. Kevin decided to go even further. He took the remains of his lunch, a half-eaten hamburger, out of his bag and began to lure the animal to look directly at the camera. The bear cub, attracted by the smell of meat, took a step toward him. Kevin unfolded the tripod to its full length, put the camera in front of him, and began to look for the perfect angle, looking only at the phone screen. The ridiculousness of the situation was that Kevin was so immersed in the virtual world through the lens that he completely lost touch with reality. He saw a cute bear cub on the screen, but he didn't see what was happening outside the frame. And in the wild, behind every defenseless bear cub is always its mother. A 300-kilogram grizzly bear came out of the dense brush only 10 meters behind Kevin. It did not growl. In the wild, attacks often happen in silence. To her, Kevin wasn't a tourist or a blogger. He was a threat, a predator trying to lure her child with an unknown object. Kevin heard the crunch of branches too late. When he turned around, a huge shadow was already looming over him. The last thing his phone's camera captured was a blurry movement of a powerful paw and a brief, terrified look from Kevin, who didn't have time to press the "take photo" button. The bear acted instinctively. One punch severed an artery in Kevin's neck, and the next knocked him down like a paper doll. The animal was not going to eat him. It simply neutralized the threat and instantly disappeared into the forest with its cub. When another group of tourists drove by 15 minutes later, they saw an empty car with the door open and a phone on a tripod lying in the dust. The camera app was still active on the screen, tirelessly scanning the empty road, waiting for a command that never came. This incident was a grim reminder that nature does not obey popularity algorithms, and beyond the phone screen, it remains merciless and real. The Grand Canyon National Park in Arizona is a place where the scale of nature makes a person feel like a tiny grain of sand. But for 27-year-old Ryan Woods, a popular travel blogger and thrill seeker, the canyon was just another platform for creating epic content. Ryan has built his career on the ability to balance on the edge. He has shot videos from the roofs of skyscrapers, against the backdrop of forest fires and during storms. His motto, "Risk is the price of attention," became his curse. On that August day, Ryan chose a remote spot on the north rim of the canyon, known for its panoramic views, but dangerous due to the complete lack of fences and its distance from hiking trails. The weather began to deteriorate in the morning. Heavy, gray-black clouds began to quickly fill the horizon, and the air became thick and electrified, a typical sign of an approaching summer thunderstorm in the Arizona desert. Most tourists would have rushed back to their cars, but Ryan saw this as an opportunity. He knew that the footage of the Grand Canyon, bisected by lightning flashes, would bring him millions of views. He climbed to the highest stone point of the ledge, where there were no trees or bushes that could block the view. To get a bird's-eye view, Ryan used his main tool, a professional 2-meter selfie stick made of aircraft aluminum and titanium inserts. He fully unfolded it, attached a camera to the end, and raised it high above his head, trying to capture the endless abyss beneath his feet and the looming storm clouds. At that moment, without realizing it, Ryan turned himself into an ideal object for the laws of physics. On the flat, open plateau where he was the highest point, the 2-meter metal antenna in his hands became a better conductor for static electricity than anything else around him. The clouds over the canyon worked like giant capacitors, and Ryan had just offered them the shortest path to the ground. Witnesses who were several hundred meters away later said that there was not even thunder, just a sudden, blinding white flash that connected heaven and earth right where Ryan was standing. A discharge of several 100 million volts passed through the titanium stick, through the boy's arms and body, instantly stopping his heart. The force of the shock was so strong that Ryan's shoes were literally welded to the rock, and the stick itself was partially melted. The tragedy of the situation was exacerbated by the fact that the camera, attached to the end of the tripod, was protected from direct impact by the rubber body of the mount. It survived and continued recording. For the next 10 minutes, as the rainstorm continued, the camera filmed the sky, the canyon, and the motionless body of its owner, who was lying on the very edge of the precipice. Ryan Woods had gotten his epic shot, but it was the last of his life. His death was a grim lesson for an entire generation. In the pursuit of the perfect angle, we often forget that nature does not take into account our plans, and physics follows its own rules, even if you have an audience of millions. 7 lives cut short by an ironic and ruthless set of circumstances. These stories are a harsh reminder that our confidence in the safety of our everyday lives is often only an illusion. We surround ourselves with comfort and technology, but sometimes simple inattention or stupid choices turn familiar things into a death trap. Life doesn't have an undo button, and the laws of physics don't take into account our plans or online popularity. Let these cases serve as a warning to you. Sometimes the line between everyday life and tragedy is much thinner than we used to think. Be attentive to the details, because they decide the outcome of your day.